Hello everyone, my name's Pushdix and welcome to my channel. So I spent the last 2 generations gaming on Xbox, but as Halo Infinite was delayed, I actually bought a PS5 instead of a Series X this time around. Having done so, I thought it'd be interesting to share my initial impressions of the PS5 and whether I made the right decision buying one instead of waiting to get the Series X. I'll talk about the design of the console, the new DualSense controller, what I like and dislike about the system, what I think of the games, and also what I miss from the Xbox ecosystem. So let's start with the look of the console. And honestly, as soon as my PS5 arrived, I really like the look of it. I'm sure it divides opinions, but personally I just think it looks really clean and crisp and I actually really like it. Because this is the digital console, it obviously doesn't include a disc drive, which makes the standard edition look quite bulky by comparison, and I actually think the omission of the disc drive really improves the look because it makes the console symmetrical. Just like my Xbox One S, the console can stand upright or lay on its side, and although I don't mind how it looks on its side, I always keep mine in its vertical position. I think it looks much better this way, and luckily I have loads of space here on top of my TV unit, so despite being on the large size, it isn't really an issue for me. One odd thing about the console is that regardless of whether you're standing it upright or laying it on its side, it does require a stand. Now obviously, Sony does include this in the box and it's actually pretty easy to attach, which is good. When it's laying on its side, you just clip it on the back by lining it up with the X, triangle, circle and square pattern, and then it's good to go. If, like me, you have the console upright, you actually have to screw in the stand using the provided screw, and you can do this with a thin coin or a screwdriver, and once it's done, you just leave it there. It's pretty simple and I don't really move my console around very often, so it's not a big deal. As I say, when the console is stood up like this, I actually think it looks pretty cool, and I really like the LED lights that run down the inside of the console. And these lights actually change colour depending on whether it's in rest mode or actually on. So when it's in rest mode, it's this orange colour, and when you power it on, it goes blue before eventually settling on white when using it. I think it looks pretty slick and has a sort of fresh futuristic look about it, and despite its size, I actually think it looks good as part of my entertainment system, especially as it matches the colour of my Xbox. To give you a better idea of the scale, I've put both consoles side by side for you, and yeah, it pretty much towers over it, but it is what it is really, and it just doesn't bother me. I previously owned the original Xbox One, you know, the big VCR one that launched with the Kinect, and the size of that didn't bother me then either. One cool thing about the PS5 is that the white faceplates have been designed to easily pop off the console, which means you can spray or replace them with a different colour. I know a lot of people have been changing these to black, although personally I quite like the default colour scheme. On the front of the PS5 you have the power button, a USB Type A port and a USB Type C port, and as this is the discless version there obviously isn't an eject button. The USB ports are really handy for quickly plugging in an external storage device or charging your controller for instance, and although they are very useful, I would have preferred these to be down near the power button. It might just be me, but I think it looks a bit odd having them bang in the middle of the console. On the back you have this large grille for heat dispersion that has all the ports you'd expect. 2 USB Type A ports, an Ethernet port and the normal AC power supply. The PS5 also features a HDMI 2.1 port, and this is what allows 4K gaming at 120 FPS, but that's only if your display is capable, which unfortunately mine isn't. So mine is a 4K HDR display, but it's only capable of 60 FPS due to its 60Hz refresh rate, so if you want to take advantage of the 120 FPS capability, this is something you will have to consider. Both the disc and digital consoles are Wi-Fi 6 compatible and come with 825GB of super fast SSD storage. Overall, I really like the design and I think it looks good as part of my setup. One thing to note however is that the digital version is about £90 or $100 cheaper than the disc version, which is actually one of the reasons I chose to go digital. But what do you think of the design? Do you like the look of the digital edition PS5? Would you prefer it in a different colour? I'll be replying to all the comments, so please do drop one down below, and while you're at it, if you enjoy this video, please do like, subscribe and ring the bell as it would really help me out. Now this is the new DualSense controller. You've probably heard a lot about this already, and for good reason. As you can see, it has a matching black and white colour scheme to the console, so they look really nice together. You can definitely tell this controller was made for the PS5. It also has this super cool texture to it which feels kind of rough, and it means it's nice and grippy, so you don't have to worry about your hands slipping when you're sweating out in the final ring of Warzone or something. If you look really closely, it's actually made up of this tiny X, square, circle and triangle pattern, which hopefully you can see here. It's a nice touch to add to what I think is a great looking controller. One of the main reasons I primarily gamed on Xbox is because I much preferred the Xbox controller to the PlayStation one. I really didn't like the DualShock 4, it always felt too small for my hands and it just felt quite cheap to me when using it. That has completely changed since owning the DualSense, and I can honestly say it's the best controller I've ever used. It's much closer to the Xbox controller in size now, so it fits my hands perfectly and it just feels really solid and well built. It's got all the usual buttons you would expect to find on a PlayStation controller. There are the 2 analog sticks, which feel nice and grippy and really responsive, although I do still prefer the offset sticks of the Xbox controller. There is the normal X, square, triangle and circle buttons, which, just like the D-pad, are now in this really nice clear plastic finish. And you also have a share button that allows you to quickly take screenshots or record game footage. You can then easily share this to Twitter or YouTube, for example, directly from the console. The menu button, built-in speaker, touchpad, motion controls and 3.5mm headphone port all make a return from the PlayStation 4 DualShock, and they all work great, as you'd expect. One nice new addition to the DualSense is that it now uses a USB-C port for charging, which is really handy as I already own loads of USB-C cables. Another new feature, however, is the new built-in microphone, which I would genuinely prefer not to be here. Annoyingly, the microphone is enabled by default, and that can be really irritating if you forget to mute the controller when you're in a game lobby. You can actually go into the settings, as you can see here, and have the controller muted by default when you log in. However, this means the orange light on the controller is permanently on, which not only ruins the look of the controller a bit, it's just quite annoying that it's set to on by default. Despite this one flaw, let's talk about where the DualSense really shines. One of the new features is the new type of vibration called haptic feedback, and it is awesome. Instead of the traditional rumble found in the Xbox controller, for example, haptic feedback is a much more accurate and sensitive way of giving feedback through the controller, and it changes depending on what's happening on screen. So for example, when playing Wreckfest, depending on the surface you're racing on, whether it's a muddy wet surface or dry dusty surface, the controller will actually simulate this through the haptic feedback. Or in Astro's Playroom, there's a section where sand is blown towards you and you can feel a sort of gritty vibration through the controller. It's very hard to get this across in a video, but it honestly adds an extra layer of immersion to the game and it really is cool. I can definitely see this being the new standard going forward, and I personally think it's only a matter of time before Xbox does the same thing. The adaptive triggers are also a big new feature on the DualSense, and they really are awesome and much better than I expected, and honestly, they're even more impressive than the haptic feedback. What these triggers do is essentially offer resistance. So for example, when firing a bow in Astro's Playroom, the trigger will resist you pushing it down, so it actually feels like you're pulling back the string of a bow. One of my favourite examples of how this can genuinely affect the immersion of a game is again in Wreckfest. So when you're playing Wreckfest, if you slam the brakes on by pulling down the left trigger, the adaptive triggers sort of lock up and kick back at your fingers, just like a real car would, and I love driving games, so this really adds to the overall experience for me. Hopefully you can see what I mean here. Just to be clear, there's no sound coming from the TV or built-in speaker on the controller here. That noise is just a combination of the adaptive triggers snapping back at my finger and the haptics vibrating in the controller. This simulates the brakes locking up really well. It's a unique way to interact with the game, and I can't wait to see what developers do with it going forward. I didn't think I would ever say I prefer a PlayStation controller over an Xbox One, but this is definitely a step up from the Xbox controller I've loved for so long. But I'd love to hear what you think of the DualSense down in the comments. Do you like the new features? Do you prefer the Xbox or PlayStation controller? Let me know down below. Having grown so comfortable with the Xbox UI, I was expecting to struggle finding my way around the PS5, but that simply hasn't been the case, and I found the UI really easy to navigate right from the off. Everything I want to use is just there. It's simple, it's clean, and it looks awesome. The crisp 4K HDR visuals really make the UI pop off the screen. I'm currently using a 43-inch Samsung Q60T and it just looks brilliant. Now, as I said earlier, this isn't a top-end TV, but it is a fairly decent display for the money, and it still makes the UI and games on the PS5 look absolutely awesome. I would, however, love to see this in one of the latest OLED panels, but unfortunately, like many others, this is just way out of my price range at the moment. Either way, if you have a 4K HDR enabled display, you will not be disappointed with the look of the UI. Personally, I think it looks much cleaner compared to what I've grown accustomed to on the Xbox ecosystem, although I still enjoy both UIs. So as you can see here, the UI for the PS5 is basically split into two main sections, one for your games and one for your media, which makes navigating around super easy. The game tab shows you all of your recently played games, and when you move through them, the background will change to that particular game's artwork, and in many cases, a soundtrack will play alongside it. Personally, I think it's really nice to look at, and I don't know who creates the game artwork, but some of them definitely need a pay rise. Just look at that Ghost of Tsushima artwork and listen to the soundtrack for a moment. It's really nice, and it sounds stupid, but I honestly find myself just sitting, looking and listening to this title screen from time to time. It's definitely my favourite example so far. If you want to access your full game library, not just your recently played games, you can do so by going to the game library icon, and this will show you all the games you've previously purchased. If you navigate across to the installed tab across the top, this shows all the games I have actually installed on my PlayStation. So inside the installed tab at the top you have all of your PS5 games, and if you scroll down past these you can see all of your PS4 titles. Again, it's just really easy to use and the navigation is nice and simple, so there's no problems here. Now, if we head over to the media tab back in the main menu, you'll find all of the apps you would expect. Netflix, Disney+, Sky, BT Sport, they're all here and they all work straight out of the box, provided you have an active subscription of course. Some of the apps here aren't actually available on my smart TV, so I do often find myself using the apps on the PlayStation, so it's great to see they're all compatible from the beginning of the generation. Now, although it looks fantastic and I think they've done a great job with the UI, I would still like the option to pick a dynamic theme and background of my choice. Even something simple like changing the size of the game icons or the colour of the overall theme would go a long way, but as of now, these options are currently unavailable. Hopefully this will be added in a future system update, but that is yet to be seen. Saying that, one area you do have some slight customization is in the pop-up menu that comes up with a quick press of the PS button. Here you have access to things like trophies, your online friends and various other settings. You can pick from a list of available functions to display here, allowing you to tailor your options. Although this menu is nice, I do feel like it takes me a little longer to find my online friends and look at my trophies on the PS5 than it does when using the Xbox menu system. It might just take a bit more getting used to, but I feel like everything in this menu is just sort of one extra button press away compared to the Xbox. When you access the pop-up menu, this is also where you can view what Sony are calling cards, as you can see here. These cards allow you to track trophies, watch short video clips showing you how to complete a section of a game you're stuck on, or in some cases fast travel to different areas of a particular game. Personally, I haven't used these cards at all and I actually think they're a bit ugly and just get in the way of an otherwise clean, minimal UI. Now, a long hold of the PS button is what takes you back to the main user interface and allows you to access your games, apps and the main console settings. Just a quick note, if you plan on storing lots of games and apps on your PS5, you may be in for a surprise. One big area that the PlayStation 5 is lacking is storage. Although the PlayStation 5 has a super fast SSD, both the digital and disc editions only come with 825GB of storage, and of that, only 667GB is available to use for games and your other media. For me, that just isn't enough. Even some of the last generation systems included 1TB or 2TB drives, and I know these weren't SSDs, but 667GB is only enough for a handful of games, and if like me, you bought the digital edition or are thinking of buying one, that space fills up pretty quick. Sony does have an answer to this, and that is expandable storage. However, as of right now, this feature is unavailable. For me, I like to have as many games installed as possible, as I regularly revisit old games or like keeping games on my system that I know will play in the future. And one of the main reasons for choosing to go digital is the ability to quickly swap back and forth between games without the need for swapping discs, so this small amount of storage does hinder that. In the meantime, you can plug in an external drive to one of the USB ports to store any backwards compatible PS4 games, freeing up space for dedicated PS5 games, as these can only run off the internal SSD, but I still find that a bit of a pain. Sony has recently updated the system so you can now store PS5 games on the external drive. However, as I say, these will not be playable until they are copied back onto the internal SSD. This is quicker than say deleting and re-downloading games, but it still isn't an ideal option. The expandable storage functionality needs sorting sooner rather than later. Taking everything into account, and these small criticisms aside, the PlayStation 5 UI is awesome to look at and easy to use. I would prefer a quicker way to access my friends and trophies, but overall I really like it, and the fact that this is in 4K gives it a really polished look. The transition from the Xbox UI to the PlayStation has been really easy due to the simple navigation, and to be honest, I've just been enjoying using something a bit different to what I'm used to. Change is good, and this is a great example of going in a new direction and it paying off. But what do you think of the UI? Do you prefer the PlayStation or the Xbox UI? If you could pick one thing to change about the PS5 UI, what would it be? Drop me a comment down below, let me know your thoughts, and I'd love to speak to you all about what you think. Now obviously the main reason to buy a new games console is to play games, and thankfully there is tons to play on the PS5, at least for me. Coming from Xbox to PlayStation puts me in a bit of a unique position. Having only played through a couple of PlayStation 4 games last generation, I have a massive back catalogue of games to play. Fortunately, the PS5 has really impressed me here because not only are nearly all PlayStation 4 games backwards compatible, a lot of them have actually been enhanced with either an FPS boost to 60 frames per second or an improved resolution, and in a lot of cases it's a combination of the two. For example, the first game I played on the PS5 was Ghost of Tsushima, a PlayStation 4 game running on PS5, but it looks absolutely stunning. It's buttery smooth, and if you haven't played this game, I can't recommend it enough. It's probably in my top 10 games of all time, and I actually got the Platinum Trophy for it as I enjoyed it that much. It really is awesome. It's got a great story, it's visually beautiful, and I love its brutal and bloody combat. This was actually my first experience of 4K gaming, and the jump in resolution from in many cases sub 1080p and 30 FPS on Xbox to 4K 60 was absolutely awesome. Unlike lots of people, I didn't bother upgrading to a PS4 Pro or Xbox One X, so it feels like a massive leap forward to me, and if you're in the same position, you won't be disappointed, trust me. Since Ghost of Tsushima, I've been playing loads more PS4 games as well, like Days Gone, Ratchet & Clank and The Last Guardian, to name just a few. If you subscribe to PlayStation Plus on PS5, it cost me around £40 or $55 for 12 months, you gain access to something called the PS Plus Collection. This is around 20 games hand-picked by Sony that you can download and play for free while you have an active subscription. This includes games like God of War, Bloodborne and The Last of Us Remastered. It really is awesome value, and I've been super impressed with the quality of games on offer. Having missed out on most of the games in the collection, having this selection of some of PlayStation 4's best games as part of my yearly subscription has been so good. Along with the PlayStation Plus collection, as long as you have an active PS Plus subscription, you also receive free games each month, and this is a similar model to the Games with Gold model on Xbox. So far I've had games like the Final Fantasy VII Remake, Oddworld Soulstorm, and more recently the enhanced version of Wreckfest. I keep expecting to be let down with the monthly offerings, but so far Sony have been delivering consistently high quality games as part of my subscription, which is in stark contrast to what I've been used to with Games with Gold. To be honest, I'm a big fan of Game Pass on Xbox as well, and although it is still the better service, the PS Plus collection and monthly free games is amazing value, especially if you missed out on most of the games offered. I'm sure if you've played all of the games on PS4 and not experienced the games on Xbox, this would be different, but for me at least, it's been awesome. I've also been playing loads of Warzone with my mates, most of which are still on Xbox, but thanks to crossplay we can still play with each other, and the transition from one console to another is easy thanks to having an Activision account. This allows you to easily bring your account and Battle Pass progress, including all your loadouts over with minimal hassle. Again, the bump in frame rate and resolution really is a game changer here, and I'm sure my KD has improved as a result. I've actually only played a handful of true PS5 games so far. Games like Godfall and Returnal look fantastic, but with games on PlayStation costing £70 or the equivalent of around $85, I've been far more selective about what I buy. If you are thinking about buying a PS5 digital, that is one thing I think you should consider. Initially, I didn't think the £70 price tag on games would bother me. However, I'll be honest, it has made me less inclined to part with my hard-earned money for a game I'm on the fence about, especially when I see the price of the disc version of games for around £20 cheaper online. One PS5 game I did bite the bullet and pay for is Demon's Souls. I've never played a Souls game before, but after playing this on PS5, I'm completely sold. It's absolutely gorgeous and really shows the graphical power of the PS5. Don't get me wrong, it's a super punishing game, and without the help of some awesome people in the community, I would have really struggled. But it's a great game, and if you like the look of it, I highly recommend giving it a go. Other than games like Demon's Souls, Astro's Playroom, Destruction All-Stars and Spider-Man, the latter of which looks absolutely awesome at 4K 60 with ray tracing enabled by the way, I haven't played too many other dedicated PS5 games. This is due to a combination of the cost being extremely high for new games, the fact there aren't actually loads of PS5 games available at the moment, but also because I'm having so much fun playing all the free PS4 games I missed out on. Maybe when I run out of enhanced PS4 games to play, my opinion will change, but for now I have so many great games to play either on the PS Plus collection or through the monthly free games that I just don't feel the need to pay £70 for a PS5 game. And the price and current lack of first party titles might be an issue for some. If you played all Sony's big hitters on PS4, you may be disappointed with the selection of games currently available on PS5. However, for me, the enhanced PS4 titles are more than enough to keep me entertained until the likes of God of War Ragnarok and Gran Turismo 7 are released. I'm also really looking forward to Kena Bridge of Spirits, which was supposed to release in early 2021, but I believe this has now been delayed until August. I appreciate not everyone is in the same position as me, so if the few PS5 exclusive games that have been released don't appeal to you, or if you've played all the PS4 games from last generation, you may be happy to just wait until more games are released before purchasing a PS5. Fortunately, what you can play on the PS5 runs and performs so well it's been an absolute joy to game on. If you didn't pick up a PS4 Pro or Xbox One X last generation, the jump in frame rate and resolution alone might make it a worthwhile buy in the meantime, regardless of the games. Also, if you're in the same position as myself and spent last generation on Xbox, I can't recommend playing these games enough. I don't want to start some kind of argument about which console has the better games, but some of these PlayStation games really are exceptionally good, and if you can afford the Series X or PS5 or have been holding off buying the Series X until more games release, you really should consider jumping on the PlayStation ecosystem. With all of these amazing PS4 games to play, loads of which have been patched for the PS5, there really isn't a better time. Anyway, let me know what you think of the current list of PS5 games. Are you waiting until more games come out before trying to get your hands on the system? Are you considering trying out the PlayStation this generation instead of Xbox? I'd love to hear what you all think, so please do drop a comment down below and let me know. The PlayStation 5 Digital has been a fantastic buy from day one. It's fast, it's quiet, it's cool, and I love its slimline symmetrical design when compared to the disc edition. I honestly haven't had any crashes in the 3 or so months I've had the system, and to me, that's impressive. The UI is slick and responsive, and it looks great on a 4K HDR display. With a massive back catalogue of enhanced PS4 titles to play and many more great games on the horizon exclusively for the PS5, things will just get better and better. The new DualSense controller is a truly awesome piece of tech, and it transforms the way you interact with games and adds an extra layer of immersion that really is a game changer. When paired with a compatible 3D audio ready headset, it makes putting down the controller after just one more game that little bit harder. Don't get me wrong, there are issues with this system. Customization is limited, the microphone is always on unless you manually disable it, and it has a worryingly limited amount of usable storage. If you are thinking of picking up a PS5, you should also really consider whether you want the disc or digital console. The £90 saving compared to the disc version will very quickly become redundant if you are buying games from the PS5 store instead of the equivalent disc versions. But the big question is, did I make the right decision buying a PS5 instead of a Series X? For me, this is an easy answer. Absolutely yes. If you have been on Xbox last generation, I would 100% recommend buying a PlayStation 5 if you can. I honestly can't recommend this system enough. I love the look of it. The DualSense controller really is the best controller ever made. The system is super fast, and the massive amount of enhanced PS4 backwards compatible games, along with the impressive list of PS5 games in the pipeline, will keep even the most hard to please gamers entertained long into the future. Just to be clear, I'll still buy a Series X, but for now, the games just aren't there, and until they are, the PS5, for me at least, has been an awesome buy. So that's it. Thank you so much if you made it to the end of this video. It's taken me a long time to film and edit this, and I really appreciate any support, so please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I have so many other video ideas that I'll be working on, covering lots of different gaming and tech, and I would love it if you came along on the journey with me. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter, and all of the links to those accounts can be found in the description of this video. I'm PushDix. I hope you have an awesome day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.